Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back for another exciting episode. Numbers were really great on last podcast, so keep listening, keep subscribing, keep sharing. We really do appreciate it. Today, what I want to do is I want to talk about something that came across my phone. And sometimes I'll save something that pops up or something that just grabs you. Obviously, the internet is full of quotes, and I have plenty of my quotes out there, and there's, it's like maybe moments of inspiration. But this one really was pertinent to this podcast. And on this podcast, what I like to do is share with you, when I talk about the success and when I come from my philosophy, what I'm sharing with you is results. And it's so many meetings, so many hours. I mean, they say 10,000 hours it goes into being an expert into a field. I have absolutely put 10,000 hours into coaching individuals and coaching how to become wealthy and capital investments, strategic moves, business decisions. And so, part of that is a joy to me because I get to see what are the people doing different than other people. And this is what I always tell you on this podcast is that take this podcast seriously, because this isn't some guy who decided, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or some self-glorification. I don't need the ego boost. I'm doing it because I'm trying to tell you, just like you're an expert in your field, I'm an expert in my field. And so what happens is when you have someone like this who's like, listen, I know, I see the trends. I know, just like a cardiovascular surgeon could tell you, hey, I can tell you the people who end up with open heart surgery and the people who don't. And I can tell you what the common similarities are and what you can do to prevent it and what you can do. And I'm the same way, right? And so I on this podcast, I want you to know I'm telling you the things that you need to do to be successful. The top, I told you last podcast, 5%, only 5% are doing these things. I'm telling you what the 5%. Now, of course, we could get into the 1%, the 1%, the 1%, but I just want you to be in the top 5 for now. How about that? The top 5% of all your peers would be a great place to get to. And so I saw this quote that came along this week, and I love it. And it's not the first time. I don't think this is his quote, and I'm not even going to cite the source, but because I think it's been used by many people. But it says, if you refuse to quit, you can't fail. If you refuse to quit, you can't fail. Seems simplistic, doesn't it? But it's not. If you refuse to quit, you can't fail. The difference between people who become very wealthy and the ones that don't is whether they quit or not. Now, we're going to talk about what they quit on. But it's like this thing of adversity. I sometimes show the entrepreneurial slide, and it shows the days when you think everything is going to go perfect in your practice and your life, and you're like, oh my gosh, everything's perfect now. And then the next day you're like, oh my gosh, we had 2 more people quit. And then the next day it's like, I'm doing well. And then it's like, and unfortunately, success, we want it to be a straight line, don't we? We do. We want success to be a straight line. We want wealth to be a straight line. And in fact, we've been inundated our entire lives with get-rich-quick schemes. I mean, I can open up my phone right now and I can listen to because they think I'm a dentist on Facebook and these things because of the similarities I have, I think, with you guys and what I look at. And so, I hear these companies, we'll get you 100 new patients in 10 minutes, And it's like, that's just a get-rich-quick scheme. I mean, it's to what? I mean, okay, revenues will go up. That doesn't even mean you'll make more money. You might have your expenses double what your revenues go up. I mean, and so what ends up happening is we've all seen the Rolls Royces and the Ferraris. And by the way, I think all that's good. And I'm not saying you can't go get it if that's what you want. What I'm saying is we've been told that it's an overnight success. We've been told. One of the best things I've ever heard is there's no such thing as an overnight success. Dave Ramsey, I remember I talked about him last podcast, and I said, so someone was telling me one of his biggest frustrations was when he had been in business for 15 years, and a young lady came in and said, y'all came out of nowhere. It's like, what are you talking about? I remember my first My first stage I ever walked into, he said he had 4 people in the room. I was listening to Tony Robbins not too long ago, and he said the same thing. And it's funny, the first room I ever walked into, I remember we were so excited. And I was told there were going to be all these doctors, and I was promised all these people were going to be in this room. I think there was like 2 people in the room. And like you walk in and you go, son of a gun, I've just spent thousands of dollars marketing. I love these people. I'm passionate. I'm talented. And only 2 people showed up. I remember walking into that room, and I remember those stories and going, even Tony Robbins started off with 2 people in the room. Even Dave Ramsey started off with 2 people in the room. Where else would you start but 2? But see, you give up. I mean, you just go, well, I'm just not going to do this. I'm not going to spend that much money and have 2 people show up. That's the wrong attitude. But it's the same thing what ends up happening. You look at these people, Elon Musk, and you look at these people, the Bill Gates of the world even, and these gigantic behemoths, and you go, even going back to people like Jeff Bezos, which is like, you don't understand that he was packing books on the ground. You think when he was packing books on the ground, he thought that he was going to be one of the wealthiest people on earth someday? The difference is he didn't quit. When his knees were hurting, when the dot-com bubble burst, when things got tough, he didn't quit. And I think that so much today, financial advisors tell you to quit. And I'm being very honest. I think people think I'm tough on financial advisors on this show, and I am. I'm tough on CPAs. I'm tough on financial advisors. I don't have no problems with that. I have no problem with that. I'm not saying they're not great people. I'm just saying that I'm tough on a lot of the philosophies, because as an entrepreneur, you got to be really careful who's giving you advice. Be willing to be open to listen to advice, but be careful who's dispensing it. Because a lot of people, even in my book, Financial Evolution, I talk about the number 2 people as the settler, the person who's given up on their dreams, the person that's given up on their hope. They've given up on the idea of whatever it was, whether it was a giant ranch or helicopters or just feeding the hungry or whatever the dream you had as a child, and you went to dental school believing some person did the biggest tragedy to you in the world, which is they told you to give up. And if you just give me $3,000 a month, you can give up on all your hopes and dreams, and you can just retire. See, I think that's what ends up happening to so many people is they just quit. And they don't just quit on that, by the way. They quit on their health. They quit on their idea of being physically fit. They quit on that. They quit on having the most successful marriage. They quit on their business and being the best dentist. They've given up that dream a long time ago. They've given up the hopes of being a billionaire or a millionaire, and they've settled for this idea of, and someone sold them. By the way, they bought something that somebody was selling them. You didn't just come up with that yourself. Somebody sold you that was the new version of success. And what happens is you quit. Now you might say, well, Eric, I go to work every day. What do you mean I quit? You gave up on those dreams, those visions, those hopes that you had. You quit. And if you refuse to quit, you can't fail. Because part of falling down is like, we just went hiking this weekend, and we're on a 4-mile hike in Colorado with my daughter, and she falls, right? Skins up her arm, and, she made it very dramatic, of course, as most 7-year-olds will. And there's part of me that thought, what a great thing to have happen is to fall down. The best thing that could have happened to her is to fall down and then get back up again. Shit, it hurt. I guarantee it hurt. Her pride, brother was watching, right? Her elbow, her chin. But she got back up again. See, you've been given some version of success that you decide to buy into. I promise you've bought into someone's version of success that you did not create for yourself, and you quit. You found it easier to get out of bed later. You found it easier to eat the cheeseburger. You found it easier to not spend time with your spouse. You found it easier not to invest. You found it easier to find some way that you can just quit on all your hopes and dreams. Quit what? See, you have to have this vision. The first thing I would challenge you on, so we refuse to quit. Well, the first thing I would tell you to refuse to quit, you can't quit on something if you haven't created something. So let me make that clear. If you're listening to this today and you do not have an iron-clear destination for your future, well, then you've already failed. Because you have no plan. You're not going anywhere. See, if you failed to plan, it's right. Failing to plan is planning to fail, right? I didn't make that up, right? Why is that such an old saying? Because it's true. Because it's true. I didn't make it up, right? We've all heard it before. That one's gotten out to you guys at this point, right? Look, it's the truth in life is the people that are willing to sit down and make a plan and say, with their spouse, with themselves, make a commitment and then don't give up. Refuse to give up. Now, here's the thing to understand why this matters. Let me tell you why this matters. You better take that ironclad plan. You better put it on a wall. You better put it on a mirror. You better, whatever you got to do, because here's why. Just like my 7-year-old fell down this week, you're going to fall down. You might have bankruptcies on the way. You might have business failures. You might have divorces. You might have employees quit. You might have COVID. Right? International pandemic, right? I guess that's the definition, international. But a pandemic happening to your business. Hell, that's what was already going to happen anyhow. If it wasn't a pandemic, somebody would have gotten sick. Some people use the pandemic to say, well, it's not my fault. Yeah, it is. See, part of life and part of success is knowing that a pandemic's coming, that winter was always going to come. And I've told you that over and over again. And so what ends up happening is you are going to get bumps and bruises as sure as I'm looking at this camera right now, as sure as I'm talking in this mic, you are going to have winters, bumps, bruises. I'm telling you, it's going to happen to you all. And if it hasn't happened yet, it's coming. Who will you be when it comes is the question. That's the question. Who will you be when it comes? 'Cause it's coming. See, if I took your business, let me give you an example of what I mean by that. If I took your business and you started off 35 years ago, like so many that listen to this podcast have, and you just grew at 7%, I want you to go back in time. I want you to look at your first year in business, and I want you to grow it at 7% for the entire time you've been in business and see what your revenues should have been. Somewhere along the line, you quit. Because if not, you'd be 5 million, 10 million, right? 12 million. It's somewhere along the line, somebody told you it's okay to settle, and I'm not okay telling people to settle. So that's why I'm passionate about this topic. And by the way, it might be your life or something else, but understand the reason that people end up waking up one day with giant organizations and tons of cash and no debt is because they did it over a period of time. They slowly reduced. It's the big granite ball that I talk about all the time, that you got to get that son of a gun rolling. And then you got to and by the way, it doesn't roll fast. When you start pushing a big 10,000 pound granite ball, it doesn't roll very easily, does it? Now, people want to sell you that you can just pick that thing up and throw it across the room, but you can't. You just got to get it rolling. And sometimes that thing rolls back on you, doesn't it? You got to be willing to push it forward again, or it's going to crush you. And what happens is when that thing, now why the reason I use the analogy of a big granite ball, and this came from doing so many hours of coaching, was that eventually, if you get that son of a gun rolling, you can't stop it. That you will have more money than you know what to do with. I promise you, people tell me, clients tell me, I have more money than I know what to do with. And that's their problem. Now, if you listen to this, you probably go, well, that sounds like a silly problem. Believe it or not, it's a problem. I want you to have that problem. Or maybe yours is not money. Maybe it's having, being able to give back, and do nothing more than give back. Maybe that's what your contribution is. Or maybe it's being able to take your kids on certain vacations or be able to pay for certain colleges or whatever it is. You don't need to listen. It doesn't have to be about some kind of accumulation number or any of those things. But understand, it's the same thing with marriages. It's the same thing with relationships. We're going to go through seasons of life. Have you refused to quit? Now, here's what I want you to do. If you've quit, I want you to get back up again. Because if you're listening to this podcast, you haven't quit. If you're taking the time to listen to this podcast, you haven't quit. I just have to tell you that. If you quit, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. You might feel like you're being crushed, but you haven't quit. This is just part of your journey. Now, it's coming. And the difference is, and I want everyone on this podcast to hear me loud and clear, you do not get wealthy overnight. People that tell you do are lying to you. It's the reason why lottery winners don't become wealthy anyhow. It's learning how to manage cash. I was just talking to someone the other day, just a simple conversation. And they said to me, they said, well, Eric, what happened if you lost everything you own? Like tomorrow, like you lost everything. I said, I'd be fine. What do you mean? I said, well, it's who you become on the way, right? It's the things I've told you on this podcast. It's learning how to create value. I could make it back again, right? It's simply learning what you need to do because, by the way, that would just be, I know that's part of a journey. I know that's part of the path is that by the way, Eric is going to get crushed. I'm going to have adversity. I'm going to have things that happen. I'm going to have bad economies. Now, I'm going to try to take advantage of those things. But the question is, do I quit when it gets tough, right? We teach our kids this. This is when going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? I mean, this stuff is elementary. Is it as simple as getting tough when the tough gets going? Yes, it's that simple. Yes, it's that simple. It's a mental mind trick. It's the mental game you play with yourself. Life is just but a game. If you think about it in that way, it's a mental chess game. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. See, financial advisors, why I get frustrated is they'll tell you to go ahead and quit. And that they'll set up a new life for you. The new life, doctor, is that I'd like to give you $3,000 a month for retirement for your fixed income, and hopefully you don't outlive it. That's quitting. It's quitting. I doubt that if I spoke to you your first year of dental school and I said, what do you want out of this life? You're going to go give 4 more years to dental school and you're going to go eventually start a business and you're going to start a family. What do you want? And I don't think any one of you would have ever looked at me and said a fixed income and I hope I don't outlive it. I hope I die before my money runs out. I don't think any of you would have given me that response. None of you. So I'm going to tell you, if someone's convinced you that, you need to fire them. Go find somebody who's actually intrigued by your dreams. Now, there's amazing financial advisors out there. That's what I'm sorry to say. I try to tell you, I'm not beating up on financial advisors. I promise you I'm not. But I am saying there's a lot of people that give you advice that is based on what they're trying to sell and sell you on. They're biased around what they're trying to get you to do because it makes their dreams come true, right? It fills their pockets. They want assets under management so that they can make more money every year. If you refuse to quit, you can't fail. See, because it's part of the journey anyhow. Because what happens is those bumps, those bruises, I'll guarantee you my daughter now knows how to, hey, maybe I should be a little more stable when I'm walking down, right, from a cliff, right? Or a hike. Take her to a cliff, just to be fair. But yeah, you got to be right. So some of this now, I've given you 2 elementary sayings and yet, well, I've got that. Do you? Because if you've got this podcast down, then you better have a very clear vision for your life. You better know what car you're driving, what home you're in, who you're impacting, whose life you're changing. What do you want your legacy to be? And if you don't know those things, you've already quit. Failing to plan is planning to fail. You can't go anywhere if you don't know where you're going. So you've got to have this idea in front of you and know where it is you're going. You've got to know where it is that you're going. And if you do that, create this vision. So I'm going to encourage you, create the vision for your life. Create the vision of where you're going. And then don't let anything or anyone deter you from it. I will tell you in advance, you're going to have bumps, you're going to have bruises, and you're going to have difficulties. It's deciding to push through those things that will allow you to be the successful person that you've always dreamed of. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you take this and instill it in your brain. I'm telling you, this is what the difference between what the great people do and the people that settle do. Take this. I want you to listen to this again. It's not that long of a podcast. I think I'm recording at 20 minutes. Listen to it again. Take notes. Give yourself some action plans, right? One of the things I think you should do is go to YouTube, go and watch this. If you're listening to this in your car, I thank you for doing that. Go watch. Sometimes there's expression you'll get, you'll see it a different way again. Share it with somebody. Go to Tower Leadership and search Tower Leadership in YouTube. You'll find a lot of other videos that might inspire you to, some other things that add around this. By the way, there's a little tiny section of a large conversation. So what happens is you just take these little pieces and you start putting them in place. Just like I told you, success doesn't happen overnight. It's listening to all these podcasts. It's adding the different pieces of information. It's making it happen. And you're not going to listen to one podcast. To fair, yeah, you could listen to a podcast of mine. It could make you a few $100,000 in one podcast. And I've seen it happen, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to build a philosophy that will take you through the tough times, that philosophy that will, if you lost everything, you could build it right back again and better and bigger and better. And I'm telling you, there's so much information to grasp. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Listen, as I tell you guys before, my mission in life is to impact people and change people's lives so that you guys become wealthy and you impact those around you. Part of you helping me on that mission is to share this. If you found this was helpful, great information, share it with people. Like it, just take a second and like it, review it. Those are the things that happen and keep propelling us forward, and we get the community and the message out to so much more people, guys. I appreciate your time. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.